Revival. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Revival. Whoa, whoa, whoa.
The Revival Initiative. What's an initiative?
Hey buds, welcome to episode 2 of the Revival Initiative. Today we have a sweet episode for you. We've got Corey LaRue with us. Corey has multiple gold and platinum Canadian records under his belt. He also was nominated for a Juno this year, which is a pretty darn big deal. You might know him from his work with Neon Dreams, and Corey's also an NSCC grad from the Recording Arts program. Today he's going to be here talking about vocal production, and I know on the Neon Dreams records, Frank's voice always sounds mint, so you're going to want to pay close attention to this and get some pointers from Corey. So, without further ado, Mr. Corey LaRue.
The Revival Initiative.
Hey, how's everybody doing today? I hope everybody's staying safe and well in these interesting times. It's exciting to hear, though, that there's still forms and communications of learning going on like this. And I feel like for the music industry in general, this is forcing people to be extra creative, to stay working and all these types of things. So I'm optimistic for the future on how things are going to look. And anyway, enough about that. My name's Corey LaRue, and I wanted to talk to you today about songwriting and producing, and I wanted to focus on vocals as well for this today. I just wanted to talk quickly on, a couple analogies on producing, songwriting, and all these types of things, and then we're going to dive into these vocals and how I mix these vocals. And the song that I'm doing today is called About You. It's by Neon Dreams. It was on Neon Dreams' last album, Sweet Dreams Till Sunbeams. And I think this song is a great example of kind of like the analogies that I put into practice into songwriting and especially into production when you're working with vocals. And the biggest thing to think about is, this may sound a little weird, but when you look at basic human communication, humans have been using rhythm to communicate for a very long time. And also we use speech. So those are our two main ways of communicating. In music, a long time ago existed of just rhythm and drum and a lot of those things. So I like to look at those things as my main foundations of the song, and then everything else continues to support that.
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
So what I mean is that our vocal is our centerpiece. That's the main point of communication with somebody who's listening to a song in most cases when you have vocals on a song. Then other than that, you want to make sure your drum rhythms are really on point and really functioning in a specific way so that they're not taking up too much attention, but they are driving home like the core rhythm of the song, and then the bass and the music follows that. Now I kind of put the bass in the rhythm section as most people do. And I think in this song particularly, it is as well, because especially in the first verse, it holds down a lot of rhythm. And I'll play it just to kind of show you what I mean.
I had a dream, you were a red lush make-believe, losing its identity, piece by piece, falling from the tallest tree, a textbook tragedy, yeah. I'm watching you dry out.
So you're hearing right away with the structure of how we wrote and arrange with this verse, there is so much room for that vocal to exist. And the things that are taking your attention right now are the vocals and the cool clap rhythm, and then the bass is giving you this, lean on me, dun 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 dun, which is like a classic, bass line that people just automatically can resonate with. So, that's kind of my point that I'm driving across, is that all of the things that are happening on a music level, whether we have these acoustic guitars, they're just holding rhythm. And there's electrics in there as well. So you can see very simple stuff this bass, contact bass. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to create a set, like the perfect soundscape for the vocal to exist in and the rhythm to exist. And this is just kind of the instrumental. Just the supportive groups, really. And you'll hear those little fill stuff is kind of when the vocal isn't happening. And the reason why I brought this up when I wanted to talk about specifically in vocals and how this correlates into mixing vocals is that this makes the vocal mix so easy. Because even when we get into the chorus, our main big point, this is our entire production that's happening. Now, it sounds pretty basic and simple, but when you play it with the vocal on top of it, it feels right. And that's what we were doing with this song, is we were crafting this song for this vocal. And so take a listen. Yeah, tons of rhythm, tons of energy, and the vocal has so much space to live.
The Revival Initiative.
Quick breakdown of kind of what's happening there. We have the classic Wurlitzer setting from the Logic electric piano, and it's just playing your chords. There is also this 808, which is like a sample 808 that I just pitched. Some processing, like some OTT and some SSL channel and stuff like that. Thanks to Mike, by the way. Mike really drove home when I was in school there, this SSL channel, and I still use it daily. Sometimes I go between this one and the Brainworks one, but the SSL, it's amazing. Then we had this bass sample. And a cool drum break, and that's pretty much holding up our... with some drum layers. Anywho, building the foundation. One thing that was really awesome with the vocal in this song is that I had just gotten Nectar by Isotope. I just downloaded it off Splice, and I was using it, and I just kind of grabbed it, and people were talking about how cool it is. And I like to apply this because I do a lot of songwriting camps, and I have to make mixes for listen back when I'm at these camps in not ideal mix situations. You'll be in a random room listening on speakers that you might not know, blah, blah, blah. So this type of thing, I find it really good because they have your vocal assistant and it gives you a start point, and you kind of know you can go from there. And that's why I really like this plugin in particular. This particular day, I was using it, and I started messing around with this harmony feature. Now, normally Frank's an amazing singer, and we normally go through and we record tons of harmonies and we do these big vocal productions. But I had thrown on this harmony track, and I think it was, I can't remember what harmony it was. I can't see what it is here now. Let me just listen.
Baby, when the rain falls down, I'll be thinking about you. I'll be thinking about you. Baby, when the rain falls
So that's without the harmony.
I'll be thinking about you. I'll be thinking about you.
Oh, it looks like it might just be an octave and the third. So we essentially put that on, and instantly we all were like, whoa, that's cool. So we caught a moment, we caught a vibe, and we didn't change it, and we didn't second guess. Technically, we probably should have went through and maybe re-recorded it, but we listened to it, we liked it, and we stuck with it, and that's in the final track. I'm not going to play this whole track through because that'll take up 3 minutes of this whole thing, but I encourage you to go listen to the version. It's on every streaming platform. It's just called About You by Neon Dreams. So I think this was kind of set up from the basic vocal assistant, and then I tweaked a lot of things and went in and actually tweaked quite a bit of things. But if you look at the basics here, we're looking at compression and EQ, boosts and cuts, and it might look like a lot what's going on. These are pretty narrow cuts and such, but as the further we get into what I was doing vocal processing wise, you'll see that I'm making up for a lot of these cuts. If we look at my vocal bus here, this is actually a pretty simple version of what I normally do, but it ended up working. And we look at the Waves de-esser, and for some reason it got reset. So let me just, where is it? Actually, I'm going to use the Renaissance de-esser just to kind of show you what I would normally do. I like to start with de-essing, and I think that the reason I do, and I kind of learned this as I went, is that the dynamic range of sibilants is very small. Whether you're singing loud or talking loud, or singing quiet or talking quiet, the volume of sibilants is actually pretty much the exact same. And especially when you put it into comparison within the dynamic range of a vocal is pretty big.
The Revival Initiative.
So what I like to do is I like to get sibilants controlled pretty much right away. So this is kind of like my user default that I always do. I like to start around 4,500, 4.5K, and I pretty much do an entire top shelf. And I will just play the vocal, and I will show you kind of how I would set that.
Baby, when the rain falls down, I'll be thinking about you. I'll be thinking about you. Baby, if you drown me out, I'll be thinking about you. I'll be thinking about you.
I normally tend to, especially with this first one, only do a couple dB, maybe 3 dB, 4 dB, and then this is smoothing out the top end. And we're going to get back to kind of adding that brightness back, but I want that top end to be smooth. Now, down the line, if you get into a situation where you find the vocal is still very sibilant, you can use another de-esser later in the chain, and I like to do more of like the narrow band. If you look at the type here, I'd normally switch to the narrow band, like really focus in on where the sibilance is coming from, and then you can control it there. But for now, this works for me 90% of the time where the sibilance is controlled. Then we have our auto-tune after that. That's just modern vocal production and sound. These are just very basic settings that I use. I really like the EFX Plus. This new one, I find it's not too I like things that get you there and are not too complicated, and this is one of them, the EFX Plus. I kind of adjust the retune speed. I know my keys, and just play around with those things. So this is where we landed with that. After that is Nectar, which we went through, and then we're looking at the Virtual Mix Rack by Slate Digital. Now, these are decisions made just about after kind of Nectar did its thing. I felt like there was some things that were lacking, some things I wanted to continue to bring back in because of the de-essing and such. And I found, especially in this chorus, his vocal had that really sharp presence at 4.5K. And I remember that specifically when we were doing these songs, that I kind of had to work to make that happen. And I used multiple stages of processing to remove that. But we start with the SSL EQ, and I'll play the vocal, and I will kind of just boost to exaggerate where I'm cutting, so you can hear why I made those cuts.
Baby, when the rain falls down, I'll be thinking about you. I'll be thinking about you.
So you can hear that right away, that is like, it's almost like a nasally boxy sound, and I just kind of got rid of that, and you'll notice it kind of clears up the mid-range and brings out the top. And we'll listen to this one. Very sharp, very present. Just kind of getting rid of that. Adding a bit of top to get some like shine out of it. And then I'm also extending even higher with this API. This 20K band I find on the API unit is really nice. It doesn't add like sibilance, but it adds just a bunch of sparkles. So I'll show you that.
Baby, when the rain falls down, I'll be thinking about
That's exaggerated.
I'll be thinking about you.
and that's where we landed. Sounds great. API EQs are amazing. And what's really nice about this Slate one is that they're not fixed on 2 dB or these cuts. You can actually, if you hold Command, you can adjust to be, if you want 3.5 or, in between 2 and 4 dB gains, you have more control. Then we're going into a compressor, and I EQ'd into the compressor, and I watched a lot of tutorials on Chris Lord-Alge. He always EQ'd into the compressor because the compressor helped tame the sibilance and jump frequencies. So if you're EQing into it, it actually kind of creates this extra exciting tone, I found. So I started with this, I created this LA3A preset, and I went through with these settings, and I started realizing after a while that with these specific settings on the FG401, that it started sounding like an LA3A. So I kind of created this my own little preset. And then we're going into a classic setting on the 1176. And super fast attack, super fast release. That's what these things are known for. And it pushes the vocals super in the front of the mix. So I'll turn these off, and then I'll play, and then I'll turn them back on.
Baby, when the rain falls down, I'll be thinking about you. I'll be thinking about you. Baby, if you drown me out, I'll be thinking about.
Adds a ton of excitement, and the articulation within the vocal starts to come out, and it pushes these EQ boosts. It accents them, I find. So those are the types of things that I like to do to kind of just get that presence in front of the mix for the vocal. And you'll find with this Blue series of the 1176, there's a bit more of a mid push, and that's why I think people use it a lot on vocal, because it actually helps push that presence range of a vocal in front of the mix. And then kind of finishing it off, because we did so much compression, I'm adding back in a little bit of body, which is like the low end with this Soundtoys EQ, and then just a touch of the top end back in. I know we've kind of added a lot in the stages, but you also have to think we're kind of I'm boosting into the compressor to make sure that the vocals are tamed, but I still want to keep the brightness that I had before the compressors. And sometimes the compressors, I find, are the first places that they attack is the low end and the high end. I find they start to take those things away. So I'm just kind of gently bringing those back in to even it back out after having all this compression happening.
The Revival Initiative.
And that kind of is the breakdown of what I did for these main chorus vocals. I have them separated into different parts. So this vocal here is for the verse, and this vocal is for the pre-chorus and chorus. And essentially the main reason I did that was because the harmony effect, I only wanted on those specific sections. And instead of just running a bunch of automation, I just created 2 channels of it. But also is that the verse needed just slightly different treatment than the pre-chorus and chorus. And you'll notice there's an extra EQ on top here, which is actually rolling out a lot of the bottom and kind of making it sound a bit thinner than the pre-chorus and chorus. So I'll play so you can hear.
I had a dream, you were a red lush make-believe, losing its identity, and piece by piece, falling from the tallest tree, a textbook tragedy. Yeah. I'm watching you die out, and I'm stumbling, and I'm.
Yeah, essentially that's it. And I just kind of scrolled through to get a refresh of kind of production choices, other production choices we made within the song. And, we focus strictly on proper drum grooves and proper rhythms. And the biggest point was working on the vocals for this song. Then we just went from there. And I think that that's how you should approach your productions, your mixes. This translates to mixing as well. Because it's going to make things a lot easier for drums to hit and for your vocal to come out. And you'll notice, not even on pop records, but on hip hop records, rock records might be a little bit different because of more prominent guitars. But you'll notice that the drums and the vocal, if the drums got to be hitting and you got to be hearing the vocal, and people like hearing the vocal clean and crisp. If you can get those things down, 9 times out of 10, your clients are going to be happy with your productions and your mixes. So focus on those things. Those are the main elements. And there's another mix engineer that I work with sometimes. His name's Miles Walker. And if you look him up, he has Grammys. He's got tons of gold records, platinum records. He's based in Atlanta. He's worked with everybody from Beyonce, Coldplay, Wiz Khalifa, and does a lot of EDM records. And he told me his process. He starts with the vocal with the mix. He creates the vocal and mixes the vocal so that the vocal is there, and then brings in drums, and then brings in bass, and brings in everything else. So no matter what happens in the mix, he knows that he gets the vocal to sound how he wants it to sound, and then makes everything else tailor to that. So instead of rolling off low end, like more low end out of a vocal or something, he tailors the bass to the vocal. And if you listen to his mixes, they sound insane. They are incredibly good because he puts those practices into play, and he understands of how people listen to songs. And that's pretty much essentially what I wanted to get across today, is that when you're doing your productions and you're mixing and all these things, is that make it the easiest for somebody to listen to it. Don't have too many things fighting for the same space. And it's like anything else. If I was doing this video right now and there was somebody else talking over top of me behind me, you wouldn't even be really able to pay attention to what I'm saying to you. Music is the exact same way. Always make it the easiest for somebody to know what the main point is that you want to be heard. If it's a guitar solo or a synth lead, make that. If it's a vocal, make it that. And then kind of build everything else around that. And it sounds simple, but I'm telling you, once you focus and master in on that, you are going to notice that mixes come easier, your productions sound better, and your clients that you're working with are a lot happier.
Okay then, welcome to Revival Revelations, the part of the episode where we dig deep with the special guests to find out a little bit more about them. Stay tuned. Revival Revelations. Why is making music important to you?
Making music is important to me because, first of all, I can't ever picture myself doing anything else. And I'm obsessed about it. And it's like there's this insane feeling of when you make a song and it's literally nothing. It starts as nothing. And then all of a sudden, you're in a songwriting session, and a few hours later, you now have this thing that never existed before. And that feeling, I think, is the reason why I make music. It's and seeing people react to songs and listening to songs and that you've made and enjoying them, I think, is so incredible. And just being able to be creative, I think, for me is super important. I'm a naturally anxious person, so I feel like staying focused on music kind of helps cure that. And it's almost like I feel like I have to, and I was meant to. So that's why I make music.
What is one thing you know now but wish you knew when you first started your career in music?
There's a lot of things I wish I knew when I first started. I think I would have spent more time focusing on business and understanding monthly overhead and, ways to make money. I think I would have started focusing on that a lot earlier, but I think it's a natural path anyway, because you have to get into the music career because you love it. And I think that I would tell everybody that this is what I would say to my former self. And I knew this anyway, but do not get in the music business to make money, because you won't for a while. And then you'll figure it out and everything will be great. But, I would just say, focus on the business, pay more attention, taxes, becoming a business, and also just the songwriting and production techniques that I know now I'd like to share with my former self, even the stuff that I shared in this video. I think those are so key, and they actually took a long time to really figure out in the right way. It sounds simple to say it, but once you start really practicing those and they become second nature in your songwriting and production, I find that really levels up your music.
Name a local artist who's inspired you and why.
I think a local artist that really has inspired me, I mean, I'm always inspired by the group members in Neon Dreams just because I've been there from the ground up. But other than that, I really look up to and you know, always look at Ria May. I find that she's been a good friend and we've made a lot of music together, but also at the same time too, just being able to have, you know, the success that she's had, but also staying so genuine and such a good person and, you know, still staying true to who she is, I think is so amazing. I mean, there's so many people I look up to. I think Classified's a big one. He really kind of paved the way for music that wasn't just traditional East Coast, and for like more hip hop, which translates to a lot of other genres. It just made more focused attention on the East Coast, knowing that other things can come out of here than traditional East Coast music.
In what ways do you think we could strengthen our local music scene in Halifax?
I mean, continued support and collaboration, I think, is super key. I feel like the biggest thing Halifax lacks right now is venues. There's no like mid-size venues. It's either like the Seahorse, then you go to the Marquee, and then you'd go to like the Metro Center, really. I mean, there's the Rebecca Cohen, all that type of stuff. But there's very little like in between like the Marquee to the Metro Center that exists. And I think that, you know, and now too, especially with what's going on, I don't know what like live music scenes are going to look like for a long time. So I guess that's not really, you know, relevant to right now. But just continued collaboration, I would say, and just, you know, the more success that people have, the more focus that comes onto the music scene here, the more access to funding that exists, you know, all those types of things.
Okay, name one local person, one local menu item, and one local album you'd like to bring with you on our next quarantine, if it ever happens. Hopefully not.
Well, the one local person I would like to bring would be my wife. And I mean that genuinely, but it kind of sounds funny. But yeah, I'd bring my wife. But other than my wife, because she's with me this quarantine, I would say I'd probably bring my buddy Frank and Adrian. So I'm cheating. I get two people. One local menu item. Oh, what are they called? Bone and something. The ramen place. Bone and something. It's on Charles Street in Halifax. Their ramen bowl thing. I had it for the first time just before quarantine. It was like the worst tease ever because now I just continuously want to get it and I can't. So I would. The ramen there, the Charles Street Bone and, oh my goodness, what is it? Bone and something. Anyway, that and one local album you'd like to bring with you in your next quarantine. I would bring Classified's Hitchhiking music, I think. Either that or Ria May. What was it? The Stars one. Stars album. I think those would be the two. I'm getting more than one. I don't know. I'm cheating in these questions, but whatever.
Well, buds, thanks for watching. That's it for episode 2. Really appreciate you tuning in. Hope you learned a lot from Corey and his sweet tips there in vocal production. I know I'm going to rewatch that video a few times to try to pick up on all the little things that he's gone over. So, give Corey a follow online. Give Neon Dreams a follow online. Support local artists. Support everyone who's a part of this program. It's a much appreciated thing from all the artists. Also, give the Revival Initiative a follow on social media, on Instagram, on YouTube, and Facebook. And we'll be back very shortly with another episode. It's going to be more tutorials, more performance videos, and more general good times. So, thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you soon. Revival.